Robby, what's on your radar?
Well, on Friday, Elon Musk announced that he would release the Twitter files, a behind-the-scenes account of why the social media site prevented users from sharing the New York Post's infamous Hunter Biden laptop story. Now, that story, which was erroneously categorized by national intelligence experts as disinformation of dubious and possibly Russian origin, well, it's become the archetypical example of social media moderation gone awry. Musk gave the scoop to the independent journalist Matt Taibbi, someone we've interviewed repeatedly on Rising. We've been happy to feature his reporting. And now his report was published on Twitter itself in a somewhat confusingly ordered thread. The thread contains fascinating, however, screenshots of conversations between various content moderators and company executives as the laptop story debacle was unfolding in real time. But given how massively Musk hyped the revelations, the results are a little disappointing and mostly confirm, I would say, what the public already had assumed about the situation. A still unidentified employee or process flagged the story as unsafe and suppressed its spread, and then Twitter moderators devised a retroactive justification, violation of a hacked materials policy, for having taken such an extraordinary step in the first place. Then CEO Jack Dorsey was largely absent from these conversations. Vijaya Gadde, Twitter's former head of trust and safety, played a key role. Quote, "None of this material is groundbreaking, however. It's already pretty well known." Now, that said, it's very useful to see some of these internal messages. They do confirm that Twitter's various departments, communications, moderation, senior management, horrendously mismanaged the entire affair. And they were not all on the same page either. Vice President of Global Communications Brandon Borman, for example, was immediately unconvinced by the hacked materials justification. Another employee, Deputy General Counsel Jim Baker, essentially felt that erring on the safe side meant suppressing the story until evidence emerged that it wasn't hacked. Well, this turned out to be extremely bad judgment. But again, the informed public already knew that the mess had been made by some combination of incompetence and employees' anti-Republican biases. The most interesting revelation in Taibbi's thread is that Twitter top executives were warned over and over again that this decision was going to create a backlash like nothing they had ever seen before. Representative Ro Khanna, a progressive lawmaker, repeatedly emailed Twitter communications staffers to complain that the firm was violating First Amendment principles. He raised some very valid points in his communications with the company, though strictly speaking, the First Amendment does not apply in this situation, and he was complaining about the First Amendment. NetChoice, a tech industry trade association, explicitly told Twitter that this would be the company's, quote, Access Hollywood moment, referencing the Trump Access Hollywood moment from the 2016 campaign. Now, unlike Twitter, both Khanna and NetChoice actually come off looking pretty good in all this. Taibbi is a great journalist and should be commended for adding to the public's understanding of what went wrong here. And also kudos to Musk for attempting to shed more light on what truly was a low moment for the culture of free speech, if not the First Amendment itself, on the platform. And now, even if we're essentially in, again, did the butler do it territory, where the mystery's explanation is pretty much what everyone expected all along and largely already knew. But what is really telling for me about all of this is how appallingly progressive and mainstream media are reacting. Not only are many media figures saying, hey, nothing to see here, they're actively shaming Taibbi for participating in the exercise at all. Wajahat Ali is a contributing writer for the New York Times who thinks that what Taibbi did was disgraceful for some reason. He says Taibbi is selling his soul for the richest white nationalist on earth. By that I take it he means Musk. And I assume by white nationalist, he means someone who would like a non-Trump Republican to win in 2024? The bar for what counts as a white nationalist keeps getting lower and lower. And also, this should go without saying, but just because revealing what went wrong under Twitter's previous management may benefit Musk right now, it doesn't mean it's wrong to do that. The American public deserves answers about how and why Twitter censored the Hunter Biden story, and we should be glad we're getting them no matter how it comes to us. The people who are mad that Taibbi and Musk are telling you more about how it happened, they're mad because they don't want you to know what happened because it implicates them. Social media companies wrongly branded the Hunter Biden story as Russian disinformation because the media was screaming at them to do just that. The MSM were the ones who got it wrong, and they don't want you to remember that. By the way, here's what Wajahat Ali said about the Hunter Biden story at the time it was released. Wonder why he wants us all to move on so quickly. And by the way, he's not alone. There were so many media figures all scolding Taibbi in unison for, quote, doing PR for the world's richest man. Here's NBC's Ben Collins, so-called expert on misinformation, thinking that Taibbi is humiliating himself. MSNBC's Mehdi Hassan said the exact same thing. Here's yet another NBC News reporter suggesting that Taibbi's work isn't as good as it was in his Rolling Stone magazine days. Rolling Stone magazine, by the way, called the Twitter files a snooze fest. Again, Rolling Stone would probably prefer that people not spend too much time on this or ask themselves questions like, what did Rolling Stone think about the Hunter Biden laptop story when it was released? Well, I have some receipts. Let's take a look at that. Oh, there you go. Vile, baseless conspiracy theories. Media figures don't want Musk or Taibbi or anyone else to dwell on the Hunter Biden laptop story because it's one of the most embarrassing collective media screw-ups in history. They pressured social media companies to suppress information. That was true because they were absolutely convinced otherwise. They were wrong then, and now they want you to kindly forget about it, please. And for me, that was almost a bigger lesson from what was, it was not what was being revealed the other night. It was then the reaction from mainstream and progressive media figures. I mean, the way they were describing Taibbi and what he was doing was just like insane. Disgraceful, shameful, promoting white nationalism, all from people who, if you look back, they were the ones, they were among a chorus of voices that was shaming social media companies into making this decision specifically. And then we've seen that again with COVID stuff as well. With the COVID stuff, I think there has been more of a lockstep government and media pressuring social media companies. In the Hunter Biden laptop case, we're understanding that, while national law enforcement, some government officials, I think, had issued dire warnings, and then after the censorship said some things that didn't make any, they all got it wrong too. From my understanding, really the driving force, in addition to just the employees themselves, was their friends in mainstream media just screaming at them. I remember as soon as the Hunter Biden laptop story came out, there were people in media saying, "Oh my God, this is so harmful. This is Russian. This is social media companies have blood on their hands if they don't do something about it." And we're seeing those same people now reacting with a, "How dare you? How dare you bring this back up?" It's so telling.
So I could completely agree with all of that. But to me, that is why the Twitter files actually don't matter that much. Because the bigger story here is that even if they hadn't limited the spread of the story on social media, on Twitter, the mainstream media anyway would have repressed the story because they are so in the bag with the Democratic Party, right? So to me, that sort of you're connecting those two things, but I think those two things are sort of in tension with each other. Like the mainstream media's capture by a woke elite, right? The same woke elite that used to rule Twitter and reign Twitter and is the reason the story was suppressed. Like, to me, that's a class story. That is about class solidarity, much more than it is about a political narrative. And I wish the right would see it that way, would see that the thing that's criminal here, I'm using that word loosely, but, the thing that's criminal here is not that, elite, well-off, influential conservatives don't get to have their say on this woke platform. That's bad and it's infuriating, right? But the real criminal problem is that 80% of Americans, the entire middle class, the entire working class, have been completely deplatformed. And those are the people that conservatives should be using their energy to platform because they agree with them on a lot of issues, but not all issues. And so to me, it's that's the story here, is the class story. And the other thing, I'm so glad you brought up Ro Khanna. He really, I think, emerges as the hero here, going behind closed doors to advocate for the free speech of his political adversaries. I cannot point to a single other politician in today's landscape who I think would do that. Can you?
I don't know. Probably not. But he did. Yeah, he did a really, really good thing there. We've been happy to have him on the show. We'd love to have him on again to discuss it. But yeah, absolutely. Was really pleased to see him making some totally reasonable observations that you would hope someone else in politics would also have, that hey, this is, really in tension with kind of some principles of free speech that we have. It's probably likely to backfire. And that's the other, takeaway I just want to put forth in all of this. I think there's no clearer example of censorship backfiring than this entire story. You mentioned how you don't think it ultimately would have had an impact on the election, like, who are the voters who are changing their mind based on this. I think, if anything, this story, the censoring of it made it seem way more important than it was, because then it was like, well, why is the truth being hidden from me? What is going on? And then it was about how woke cultural forces, mainstream forces, want to hide the truth from you. And also just didn't work because then there were thousands of stories about the decision that was made. So even if you couldn't read the Hunter Biden laptop story, well, now there's all these stories that are not being suppressed everywhere about the actions that Twitter and Facebook, et cetera, took. So more people were learning about it. It's a very clear example, to my mind, of the Streisand effect in practice, which is the famous example of the actress, trying to stop the media from having pictures of her like beautiful palatial homes or something, and then there's coverage of how she's trying to stop that, and it gets out of hand, et cetera. All right, well, that's us on Elon Musk. I'm sure we'll be talking about it more soon, and we'll have more Rising right after this.